Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to join me here on today's webinar, which we're looking at business recovery planning. If this is your first time using Zoom, there might be some of you still out there that haven't been on the platform before. Audio settings will be down in your toolbar at the bottom. Towards the left, we'll have your mute on and off. Submit any questions you've got today through the chat or the Q&A, and I will do my level best to run to time, but in the event you need to leave before 1 o'clock SA time, then in the bottom right hand corner is where you can exit. As I put in the chat panel, you're welcome to ask questions throughout the presentation today. I'll do my best to make sure that I respond to them during the call, but if I miss them, I'll certainly wrap up at the end. So in any case, there'll be plenty of opportunity to ask questions as we go. For those who don't know me, my name is Chris East, Principal of East Partners, accounting firm based in Payneham in Adelaide. The thought for today: smooth seas don't make for the skillful sailor. When we consider the economic environment that I guess that we've had, let's go before, well certainly the start of this year and before, where things were relatively positive, relatively buoyant, I guess, it's generally reasonably straightforward to chart a course of success when things are in our favour, when the wind is at our back. When we face turmoil, like a lot of us have over the last 10 weeks or so now, then this is really when it's, as business owners, the challenge is put to us. And the challenges that a lot of us have faced over the last 10, 12 weeks have been, nothing like it has ever been encountered. So it is the pressure is on now to consider, to say, well, okay, we've got through the worst. Those of you that did the business continuity planning session that we ran some 9 weeks ago, when things were being shut down, where businesses were told that they needed to close their doors, where people were possibly putting staff off, losing contracts, all of those things, and the emergency measures were needing to be put in place to get through. Then the government stimulus packages came through. Now we're at the point to say, well, okay, these things have happened. Some businesses are opening their doors, but are probably finding a very different landscape to what it was before. Hence why I felt it was appropriate to now look and say, well, all right, we've been through perhaps the immediate shock. What do we do when things start to reopen? So then, looking at the agenda for today, I want to look at what I call closing the disconnect, the need to reinvent. There's been a lot of talk around the need to reinvent, but let's have a look at what does that really mean. It may mean less for some, more for others. It really depends on your business. Revisit your budget. I think it's always imperative. Cash is king. I'm sure you know that, but it's never more relevant now than ever. Let's look at the opportunities, because yes, crisis does bring opportunities. Identifying and managing risks, looking at goals and actions, pulling things together, what your next steps are, and how we can help. Before we get in, I want to just put a bit of a disclaimer in, which perhaps we're a little famous for in this industry. I just want to make it clear, we are not insolvency specialists, and I'm sure that you can appreciate that. There's very strict rules and regulations around solvency, some of which have been amended to account for the impacts of COVID-19. However, if your business is unable to continue to trade as a result of solvency or possibly even bank issues, it's appropriate to consider engaging a solvency specialist. There's part of the presentation where I will look at that, but I want just to be clear up front. We're not looking to provide insolvency advice, and we're not looking perhaps at the ins and outs around solvency today. So closing the disconnect, what do we mean there? I just want to share some thoughts around how we can stay better connected at this time. And I'm not necessarily talking about tech such as today, doing things like webinars and various other online meetings. Whilst they've been really important, that's not what I mean by closing the disconnect. I'm coming from the perspective of how we can work together more effectively now and in the future. Looking at your expertise and how that can be combined with ours to create outcomes that wouldn't be possible by working alone. In our view, it's never been more important to connect with a team of people who can help you. As I've said in a couple of these presentations that I've done over the last couple of months, engaging people like your banker, your legal, HR advisors, and obviously your accountants, so they can help work together in a collaborative setting so that you can come up with a far better plan than what is perhaps otherwise possible when trying to do this on your own. At East Partners, our core purpose is to build profitable businesses that deliver their owners the lifestyle they want and ultimately enable them to make a difference in the world. Primarily the reason why I'm running this webinar and why we've run webinars over the last couple of months. So I reckon it's time that we actually get into the bones of the presentation. Take notes, if you've got a pen and paper, hop into it, turn that phone to silent, and let's get some value out of today's presentation. The need to innovate. I'm sure we've heard all sorts of stories about businesses that have been innovating over the last couple of months, whether through necessity, whether it's been through having a little more time on hands, whether it's been plans that have been in the cupboard, maybe front of mind, on the corner of the desk, buried in the bottom drawer, wherever it may have been. The gonna one day list, I call it. And yeah, I'll get to it one day. And what that one day may have come for whatever reason over the last couple of months. During times of adversity, we're often forced to think outside the square, to reinvent the way we work or behave. In our view, there's four main opportunities where a business has the opportunity to reinvent itself. The opportunity to innovate, I guess the dictionary definition defines the innovation word as the introduction of new things, ideas, or ways of doing something. So a great example that we've seen during the pandemic as a company that's changed from, selling travel pillows to hair clippers. It's a fairly divergent, or a significant divergence from what they were doing. But in this sense, innovation is doing something that is completely different. An example you might be doing is perhaps introducing a new product line or a service. The second way to reinvent is to re-engineer. So to re-engineer essentially means to change or improve the design of a product or a system. So in other words, use what you've already got to produce something completely different. So I'm sure that we have all heard about the craft breweries and the like that have moved across into hand sanitizer. I think we've gone from a market which was completely devoid of hand sanitizer a couple of months ago to hand sanitizer wherever you turn. It seems to be everywhere now. But when we do look at that, we then say, well, it's certainly not meaning re-engineering one's business, whereby it might be safe to think that consuming disinfectant could be a cure for the virus, as our friend in the US perhaps was advocating a few weeks ago. The third way is the need to adapt, to reinvent your business in adapting or changing the way you deliver the product or service that you offer. The biological definition of adaptation the process by which a species becomes fitted to its environment. Or in other words, if we take the new normal or the new environment that we find ourselves in, how can we change to suit that environment better? And perhaps that's been very top of mind, or has been considered in more recent times, once businesses had looked at their continuity plan, then arranged for various government subsidies and grants and so forth to enable cash to be flowing, is then looking to say, right, now that I've got that aspect done, how do I now adapt? What does the new normal look like? Great example is a local beauty therapy business that emailed their client base offering a free online skin consultation if they bought the product, as well as a new bundle of various other products, being full-size samples and full-size products and multiple samples. Market has been a home facial, so that business obviously was unable to offer beauty therapy in the traditional way during the lockdown, so needed to adapt to an online solution. And I'm sure that you have encountered businesses in your world, places where you would ordinarily consume, that have moved from the traditional to a different means of delivering their product or service. And the last one is the need to widen your lane. And what do we mean by that? So we essentially are saying it's broadening the product offer or service offering. So for example, it's the cafe that broadens their offering from purely food and coffee to perhaps offering ready-made meals, boxes of product, selling wholesale ingredients. So we've seen some traditional cafes, if you like, become mini supermarkets. And even offering perhaps ingredients with recipes for making their signature treats. So looking at, perhaps a restaurant that has been renowned for a particular product offering that they have on their menu, is perhaps enabling the customers to say, well, try making this up at home for yourself. So with these four ideas in mind, being innovation, re-engineering, adapting, or broadening your offering, what can you do in your business? And some of these you might have already been thinking about or even looking at implementing. So this is essentially what I mean by business recovery plan. Now we need to look at the financial aspect. There's a natural order in which to reinvent your business. And with business continuity planning, as we said in our, for those of you that were on the line a couple of months back when we did that session on business continuity planning, we talked about putting the oxygen mask on yourself first. Just like when we fly, well, not that we fly at the moment, but when we did. And we have the safety demonstration. Put your own oxygen mask on first before helping others. When we talked about business continuity planning, we had to get our house in order before we could help anyone else. And by that, we talked about helping our team and helping our customers. Recovery planning is no different. You have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. The business needs to be there to serve you, not the other way around. Ideally, you shouldn't be a slave to your business. Sometimes easier said than done. I fully recognise that. But in terms of trying to get some semblance of order around that, the first step is to put your shareholder or owner hat on and define what you need to get from your business. Can you make savings in your personal spending to reduce the cash flow strain on the business? No doubt that some of you would have been making savings during the recent lockdown. Are these savings sustainable? Can you continue? Updating your personal budget is best done using a template, and some of you have accessed our template. If you don't have it, by all means get in touch, and I'm more than happy to provide that. Update this so that you don't miss any expenses, and an easy way to do it is simply look over your bank statements online to see where the monies typically go each month. Of course, you need to be realistic, because lockdown is a very different way of spending. So naturally, some things will drop off purely because of the circumstance that we've all faced. But as I said, are those savings sustainable? And if they are, look to see how that could possibly affect your personal budget out over a 3, 4, maybe even a 6-month period. And then move into, once you've done your personal budget, look at revising your business budget. I know that many of you have done a business budget for the year. Oftentimes the Christmas break, New Year break is a great time to do that. And clearly, seems like an eternity ago, I know, but undoubtedly there has been a substantial shift in what expectation would have been some 6 months ago. The process by which we do, or which we recommend doing this, is a bottom-up process, essentially where you start with the increase in cash that you want to achieve for the year. It's important to start here. In my view, as many businesses have found that they didn't have a sufficient war chest of cash going into the lockdown. And that's often the case, not necessarily with something as drastic as what the lockdown has been, but even when there's been on a business that's looking on some significant expansionary plans, businesses will suck cash, particularly when they're growing, or certainly now, where there wasn't a lot of cash perhaps to start off with, and now looking to try and kickstart again, possibly with some of those 4 ways that I spoke about just before, in terms of changing the nature of the way the business may look. Now, this isn't to say that I want to be particularly technical in talking accountanese here, because I don't want to be this to develop into a technical session, because that'll just send you to sleep. What I want to show, though, is how you can take control by going through a high-level step-by-step process. And I emphasise that it is high level. So walk through this budget, starting with the war chest, and make these points. First point being other cash movements. You may be able to free up cash by reducing your debtors, so what your customers owe to you. If you're a retail business, what stock you may have, or if you have service, maybe work in progress, or even by negotiating better terms with suppliers. The second one is looking at perhaps some finance, and we certainly spoke about this in the business continuity planning session, is getting in touch with financiers and seeing if there's any means by which those arrangements can be restructured. Look at your assets that you may have. What assets do you have that might be obsolete or that aren't required anymore that you may be able to sell and free up some cash? Fourth point, considering the drawings that you take from your business and having those funded into your personal budget. If you've gone through and found savings in your personal budget, then there's no need to be withdrawing the same amount of cash out of the business. Then looking at what's then available. Add up these amounts to then say, well, what impact does this then have on your cash war chest? Always be careful on looking at the overheads that you have and see if savings can be made, but don't cut to the bone. I've seen a lot of businesses that have cut too deep, and whilst they've had some immediate cash flow saving, they've had longer term problems. These will then help to filter into the margins that you have on your sales, on your cost of sales, and on your net profits. And ideally from there, you'll be in a position to start looking at a more detailed month-by-month forecast from which you'd be able to track your progress. So what to measure and how to measure? This is where having real-time digital reports on your numbers is so important. So I know a number of you online today use Xero. Xero does provide real-time information, so you are well equipped to be able to get ready access to a lot of this information. So as an example, if you'd identified your sales total for the year needed to be, let's say 500,000, and that's more or less equates to about 10,500 a week, assuming your business is open for 48 weeks of the year. You'll need to have a system for recording how you're going against that target. Likewise, if you have debtor terms of, say, 7 days, and your debtors are currently taking 41 days to pay you on average, then clearly you'll want to measure that number to see if it's improving or otherwise. It's my recommendation you measure no more than 5 of your most important numbers, sometimes referred to as key performance indicators or KPIs. Why 5? Really, anything beyond that, in my experience, is just too hard to track. And I'd argue that some of those other numbers, or there could well be KPIs that you think are essential, which perhaps are more nice to knows rather than must knows. It's a darn sight easier to have a succinct number of things which you know are essential to the operation of your business. Once you have the KPIs and the budget, it's important to have these numbers essentially tracked. It's loaded into a monthly reporting system, which you may have, so that you can track your actual results against your budget. There are a number of solutions out there which, if you want to have a conversation around that, I'm happy to do so. So let's look at opportunities, because there is opportunity out of crisis. Once you know at a high level what your budget is, it's time to look at the opportunities that exist to achieve that budget. My recommendation is to focus on no more than the 5 of the key opportunities, which links in nicely to your 5 KPIs. Think of the ideas we talked about earlier to reinvent your business. So these opportunities could also be things like working in more of an online way with your team or customers. Perhaps that opportunity has shown up over recent times to have been effective. You may no longer need the same premises that you have, or you may need to redefine the roles in your business. There may be new lines of revenue to pursue or other businesses to acquire. There's other opportunities that might be around the adoption or expansion of technology or systems to improve efficiency or online communication. It could be in a myriad of areas where the whole lockdown has shown up to say, well, here is something, possibly in some cases where you've been forced to have to do something. Conversely, there could be other areas where you've looked and thought, well, yeah, I've tried that and that wasn't for me. Taking the time to brainstorm all the opportunities to improve your business is a really valuable and empowering exercise. Most importantly, though, you need to leave no stone unturned. It's the best way to be able to make sure that you've covered all of those potential opportunities. Conversely, there's vulnerabilities and there's challenges that need to be considered. There's always a flip side. What are the 5 biggest vulnerabilities in your business right now? They could be things like poor cash flow, sustained downturn in demand for current products or services, poor data management, banking covenants may not be met. There's various other ones. Being able to identify those vulnerabilities enables you to make a plan to overcome them, so that at least you then have those being able to be put front of mind. It's really important to be brutally honest in your assessment of the vulnerabilities. And I think sometimes we can be the harshest critic of ourselves. However, when it comes looking at these things, I think we do need to be really honest about what these roadblocks or these challenges are. A rosy plan for your finances, for example, is not going to pass. It's not going to pass the smell test, particularly now in the times that we're in. Once you've identified your 5 biggest opportunities as well as the vulnerabilities, have a look at the 2 to 3 most critical challenges. These might be things like deciding whether or not to sell or liquidate part of the business, or possibly establishing an online sales platform, or even securing sufficient finance to trade through the next 3 months. So looking at identifying and managing risks, we strongly recommend that you do careful analysis on all the risks in your business. The best way to do this is perhaps to complete a thing called the risk register, or a risk register, which assesses the likelihood of each risk and then the consequences for your business if it isn't mitigated, which is essentially what this table is, with the green areas being the, if you like, the good area, the less likely, and anything in the red zone being a problem. And as you can see on this, with likelihood down the side and consequences along the top, that's what that's referring to. So when we look at some of the areas in here, we want to be considering, say for example, with governance. Well, essentially that is around poor planning. You know, is the business being just run day to day, open the doors, see what happens, and at the end of the day we say, oh well, that was okay, we'll see what happens tomorrow, or well, that wasn't a great day, maybe tomorrow will be better. No real planning, pretty average, poor discipline around working on the business. If you're a business that's got employees, what's leadership like? Well, are there risks around communication? What is team morale like? When we look at our products or services, is there risk around the lack of innovation or adaptation? So looking at some of those areas that was discussed earlier, how has your business fared in relation to what you had before compared to perhaps what you have now, or what your market needs now, more importantly? Operationally, are there risks around suppliers or supply chain? And you know, invariably some of your suppliers may no longer be around, or may not be around for the long term as a result of what has been happening in the last couple of months. What's your marketing like? So risks around here could be poor return on investment or overspending, maybe a lack of a digital presence, maybe monies are being spent in areas which are not producing any results. Conversely, if there is good results, how can you leverage those further? When we look at sales, the need to adapt to e-commerce or online selling, is that an opportunity or a risk in your business? What's the financing structure like? What's your credit control like? What's your debtor management like? What is your cash flow planning like? Is there forecasting in place to be able to get a good grip on where your money is going and where it's likely to go? Again, if you've got team, what's the HR structure look like? Do you have good policies in place? Is there the need to perhaps restructure? I know of businesses where there has been the need to restructure over recent months because of the lockdown situation that businesses have faced. What does admin look like? And by that, we talk about, is there the opportunity for automating some processes? Which then links into the use of technology. What technology do we have? Are we getting the most out of it? Could it be leveraged further? What do all of those then look like in terms of the matrix that we then have on, as we can see on the screen here? So looking at that, we then say, well, what do we need to do? What are some of the goals or actions that need to be set? Once you've identified the risks, you need to pull everything together into a cohesive plan with goals, actions, and obviously responsibilities. So the business recovery plan is much more detailed than if you like, just a general business plan. And you get right down into the detail for each area of your business, whether that be the sole trader business, the one-person business, through to a business that's multi-layered with various teams, managers, and different divisions. As always, goals need to be smart. They need to be able to be assigned to someone responsible. Again, even if it is the one-person business, what responsibilities need to be done, possibly directly by that business owner or by their support team that they have around them. Remembering earlier where I'm talking about banks, accountants, lawyers, and the like. These goals and actions, of course, should be updated regularly through some form of regular review process. I'd suggest at the moment monthly is perhaps the most important or makes most sense because things are changing so quick. It could even be more regular than that, but at least on a formal level, looking at how are these things tracking monthly? Are we on track in this very dynamic situation that we're all in? And as things develop, once you get to a 6-month point, perhaps then reviewing those could be blown out a little further, maybe out to 3 months, say, rather than every month. Again, that's going to depend on the size of the goals that you determine are most appropriate for your business. So then when we look at pulling everything together as a complete package, what does that mean? So depending on your circumstances, your package should include the personal budget that I spoke of earlier, the risk register that we looked at, your business recovery plan, the forecast that you have for your business. If you have a team of people, perhaps an updated organisation chart, particularly if you are looking for finance and linked to that, a finance application, whether that's for an extension of facilities or perhaps a refinance of facilities. You may not need to do all this work at the same time, and I'd probably say it would be very difficult to do all of that in one hit. For example, if you have sufficient cash flow now, then looking at finance is not required. Likewise, if you don't have a team, then you don't need an organisation chart. So really look at what is needing to be done first and go from there. But I'd certainly suggest from the outset looking at your own personal budget and then how that links into the business, and then follow that process. Makes the most sense. The most important thing is to establish what's right for you. What combination of these do you need? And who should help you with them? So I'm just going to now walk through what perhaps a business recovery plan could look like. Now, this is something which, having looked at for some other clients, you can perhaps, if you like, expect, or some of the things that perhaps make the most sense to consider. So in this particular case, for keeping identities confidential, what does this look like? So we've got, in this case, we've done an executive summary for this particular business, which it's not unexpected. They've had some cash flow problems. Customers been slow to pay, a decline in income from one of the divisions of their business. And of course, there's pressure on wages, albeit there is some assistance with government, JobKeeper and the like. But there's some improvements in systems that are needed and so forth. So this is looking at a high level summary of where is this business at a particular time. Analysis is then done on what are the business owners currently doing, what would they like in time. And not only from an income perspective, but also from a role, hours of work. In this case, there's some financing required to assist in the recovery of this business. There's also, it's a good idea to take a look at running that budget into what does that mean in terms of numbers. And as you can see, this template is set up to then be able to track the budgeted numbers over 4 quarters. Now, as I said before, probably in some businesses tracking that over or monthly for the 6 months is a good idea. So the template would be updated accordingly to suit the circumstances that you're in. Likewise, when we then look at things around profit targets and owner withdrawals, possibly asset sales or maybe purchases if there's expansion required, or even replacement of obsolete assets, maybe even taking advantage of the immediate write-off for new assets that's available at present. Financing and so forth. What does that then look like over a 12-month period? And then breaking that into the critical KPIs for these to be achieved. So in this particular case, debtor days clearly is a challenge, wanting to get those debtor days under 45 days. Similar with stock, also wanting to grow the gross profit margin, which essentially is the material costs deducted from sales. So there's your gross profit, sales less direct material costs, or maybe direct wage cost if you're a service-based business. There's a sales target in there, and then there's a, I guess perhaps more of an accountability target of saying that there needs to be some monthly meetings. The opportunities have been identified. Vulnerabilities also are identified, and the most critical challenges. So like I said before, stick to no more than 5 KPIs, identify the top 5 opportunities, same with vulnerabilities, and then break that into the most critical challenges. And this clearly has some strategic impact on where this business may end up. So then we're then, Then we're then looking at breaking this down across various areas of the business, looking at the governance, leadership, product development, looking at what the goals are around that more broadly and breaking that down into 90-day goals. For clients on the line, I'm sure you'll be well aware of my view on goal setting. And I break it into 90-day goals. Often use it with the football analogy. There's 4 quarters in a football game. Let's look at 4 quarters within the annual game plan of our business. What can be achieved within the next 90 days? And again, that's spreading that across who needs to do them by when. So it becomes quite a concise action plan, working that through marketing, sales, and so forth. Now, some of these areas aren't going to be relevant for every business. I fully understand that. But what this does is it gives a 2-page action plan, which can then be put in a highly visible space to then make sure that you stay on track. And then the financial outcomes of those can then be linked into the plan that I showed a couple of slides ago. Now, I've whipped through a bit of stuff reasonably quick and I'm running ahead of time, so I will try and pull this back a little just to let some of this sink in. But as you can see here, doing nothing is not an option. For those that did the business continuity plan, that was made very clear as well. And even with the last session we ran around the government assistance, doing nothing is not an option. Putting the oxygen mask on yourself first is absolutely essential. You can't be in a position where you're going to be able to help anyone else until you've helped yourself. The more sustainable you can make your business right now, the better it will be for everyone. And make a plan. Make a plan to get through these challenging times. The plan has and will continue to evolve. It seems like an eternity ago, but it was 9 weeks ago that we did the business continuity plan webinar, which at that point we had borders being shut, we were having businesses shut down, we were having share markets in turmoil, There was a huge amount of anxiety. No one knew what was going on. It seems forever ago, but it was only 9 weeks ago. There's a lot that's happened in that time. That plan that was in place then would have continued to evolve, and from here will continue to evolve. Focus on what you can do as opposed to worrying about what might happen. I can't stress this one enough. Control the things that are within your grasp. There's a lot of things out there which none of us will be able to make any impact on. So look at how the broader market is affecting your business, and look at the opportunities that brings, and look at the vulnerabilities that it may pose. And finally, look to get help. We've done a lot of work with a lot of clients over the last few months, certainly in the continuity space, in the government incentives, and now looking at recovery planning. Re-engineering some businesses, maybe some businesses, helping them to adapt to the new world. Looking at perhaps commercialising some ideas that businesses or business owners have had. And the recent lockdown has, I guess, provided them some opportunity to see how can we bring this to light. So if you haven't done your business recovery plan, now is the time to get this going. Great foundation from which to build your cash flow and your business improvement strategy. And for those that need refinancing or perhaps new finance, it will certainly help in presenting a stronger case to banks. So your options around completing the plan are a first one of meeting with us, whether you want to do that face-to-face or online. Still doing plenty of Zoom meetings, but getting more people now that are confident to come in and have a face-to-face discussion. Either way, looking at how we can do this together, setting up a single session for 4 hours, or maybe 2 sessions across 2 hours each. We'd look to do some in-depth pre-work for you to complete, so that you have the time to consider the impact that the whole COVID-19 lockdown has had on each area of your business. And using this pre-work as a guide for us then to help in the development of the plan and setting goals across various aspects of your business. That ensures that you have a detailed and well thought out plan to give your business the best chance of recovery. The second option is the same as the first, with the extension of looking at an updated cash flow forecast and a full finance application in the format that your bank requires. So really trying to make that process as streamlined as possible. Every bank has a different process, so it's then making sure that once your application is ready to submit, that it's got more chance of being able to approve, if that's what your business is needing right now. The third option is the complementary review. Now, essentially what we're talking about here is that what we would do in that case, we'd send you a complementary business recovery action list to complete, which effectively is a condensed version of the plan. This option perhaps suits those of you that has a small business that doesn't require a full comprehensive business recovery plan. But in this case, once you've done that action plan, we'll schedule a time to have a conversation, probably half an hour, either via Zoom or over the phone, to talk over what you've got in your plan and what some next steps could be. Of course, the risk with that approach, and it's not to downplay this option, but it's being aware that with everything else going on right now, you may get around to doing the work. Now, that's fairly common, I would suggest, at any time in a business, whether things are booming or whether things are slow. There's always going to be things that you're going to be focused on, and there may not be the time. For those of you who are on the line and are not currently clients, you are more than welcome to schedule a complimentary meeting with us, where we essentially will discuss what your goals are, what your current problems and challenges are, and then see if there is a way that we can support you. So really it's a get to know you type thing to understand what our process is. So as I said, yes, if you are a visitor to East Partners on the call today, you're more than welcome to take up that fourth option. In any case, if you're going to need to obtain business funding, my view, it's vital that you prepare a cash flow forecast. I think cash flow forecasts are important at any time, but when it comes to financing, and particularly in the environment that we're in, where banks are hesitant to be loosening the purse strings, having a fully structured, fully costed cash flow plan is essential. The loan obviously has to be repaid, so your business is going to have to be in a strong enough position to be able to repay that. Now, look, I'm clearly aware that it's going to be difficult for some of you to commit to spending money right now. I absolutely get that. We've got clients already that are having cash flow trouble, so as I said, I'm fully aware of that. There's lots of different payment options around. In some cases, depending on the industry you're in, there could even be some government grants or so forth that can assist with being able to help with funding. In any case, don't let the cost be the barrier. I'll give an example where we had a situation recently with a client, large amount of or debtor days well beyond where they wanted them to be, having huge impacts on their cash flow, looking at strategies that could help reduce those debtor days. Reducing the debtor days in that case by 20% gave them an extra $15,000 of cash. Now, just that one strategy alone easily paid for their investment. So there will be things in your business that will be able to be done, and the cash flow benefits as a result of that will pay for the investment. So, as I said, don't let cost be the barrier. Please get in touch so that we can work out on how we can come an arrangement to help you with the recovery plan for your business. Okie dokes. Time for some questions. I will just have a look in the chat. I haven't got any questions from our audience to date, so if you do have anything, please put them into the chat area. But I did have, I've got some questions that I just gleaned from other conversations that I've had over recent times, which I thought I'll just put them in just to talk about. So one person had put this to me when we were having a conversation directly. They basically said, look, I like the idea of a business recovery plan, but I'm so busy with what I've got to do right now. How can I free up capacity to do the work? And look, it's a terrific question. When we looked at that, part of my response, once I got a bit of an idea around, well, what were they busy on? I'm sure if any of you have been on one of these sessions before, or even if you haven't, you might have heard of the Achiever Matrix, which has got the 4 quadrants with the not urgent and not important, which is essentially the quadrant of waste. So for that, we're spending time on things that aren't urgent and aren't important. Every business has got those things where they find themselves, oh, I'll just do that because it'll just then get it done. But neither is it urgent or important. It's about being disciplined about putting time into what's important but not urgent. So in that particular part of that matrix, because that part of the matrix will save you time in the future. And I appreciate it's hard. It's absolutely difficult when you've got orders to fulfill, customers to serve, the day-to-day issues associated with running a business. But when you have urgent, important work to deal with right now, that's why I feel that it's perhaps the best thing to say, look, I do need some external help with this. I recognise it's urgent, or it's important but not urgent, or maybe it's urgent. but I just can't get to it. I need some help. And in that same conversation, it was, well, how am I going to be able to afford to pay for the work? Well, as I said before, there's various other, in some cases I have seen some government grants, but in our own case, and I'm sure that for those of you that are clients, there is fee funding arrangements available whereby the fee can be paid over a period of time. In the case where it's perhaps looking for an expansion or a restructuring of finance facilities, the cost could be included in that. So there's any myriad of ways if cost is a potential barrier. Don't let it be, because there's lots of solutions that can be put in place. I can't see any other questions in the... No other questions in the chat at this point. All right, so I'll just pop my camera on, given that we're starting to get towards the end. I'll leave the parting thought. Nothing is so contagious as enthusiasm. I'm sure we've all met people over our time where we've just thought, my goodness, they are so enthusiastic they could walk through walls. Or maybe we've been to presentations where after we've left and thought, wow, yeah, it feels like I'm floating on air. I want to thank you for making the time to attend today's webinar, and really appreciate that your time is really valuable. For a lot of you that are coming out of being locked down and looking to find your feet again, I'm sure that there is a lot to be done, and possibly even looking at implementing some of those ideas that you wanted to implement during the time that things were locked down. I hope I've given you lots of ideas and given some clear options on how we can support you in this process. So what I'd suggest is make a simple plan. Do that today. Do it as soon as you possibly can. Commit to at least 3 areas of action that you will take as a result of being here today. Write them down. If a goal isn't written down, it doesn't exist. And I'm sure you've heard other people say that. I completely subscribe to that. And give each one of those goals an owner. Give it a completion date. Put some accountability. Put some targets in around it. It's a worrying time for many businesses. I know that. I've had lots of conversations with lots of clients over the last few months, and yes, it is a worrying time. Just because things are reopening doesn't mean it will be the same as it was before. There is still lots of anxiety, but there's no need to be burdening yourself, worrying about that all on your own. There's lots of support out there, and there will be more to come, I am sure. And as I said, we're here to support you as you continue on your journey from lockdown to reopening and recovery. So I'd like to thank you for your attendance today. There's nothing else in the chat. If anyone wants to reach out separately and have a conversation, please do so. We are here to help. It really has been a pleasure of helping lots of clients over the last few months with not only with looking at how to put their business into a position where it can survive, but also looking at the various government packages and cash flow boost and JobKeeper and all of these things. And I guess in a lot of your cases, or certainly a lot of clients' cases, it's just being able to be there to be able to be that sounding board and perhaps that voice of reason, maybe reassurance. So, as I said, I appreciate your ongoing support and trust in that. So if there's nothing further, I'll wrap it up, and I hope to see you online again when we run one of our next sessions. Thanks again.